Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, now streaming only on Netflix.
We're here to entertain you. We'll sing your songs for good times, the best times. You can't go wrong. We'll two-step, a new step. It won't be long when the Dixielanders are playing. Soon you'll be swaying, so come on, sing along.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Before My Time. I am your host, Gelsey LaLauries, and I am here to enter into the new season of Halloween, starting with one of my favorite short, true scary stories of America, the story of Delphine LaLauries. Let's go.
Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come baby come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come baby, come baby, baby, come, come. Come baby, come baby, baby, come.
Hey, Gels, I have no clue what we're talking about this week.
Great, me neither. That makes two of us.
You threw this topic at me, and I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, they are one of our lovely horror stories of America. So we're going to talk about the LaLauries today, specifically
Okay.
Delphine LaLauries. And yes, her name is spelled just like mine with an extra la. So
I was
my
gonna
last
ask
name,
about
Laurie,
that.
if you just put a la in front of it, that makes me psychotic. It's not something to be proud of. I definitely don't want to be related to Delphine LaLauries. But her last name's dope, and I do love the name Delphine. So, uh-oh. This is a New Orleans ghost story, kind of, if you will, and New Orleans is my favorite city in the U.S. So I've done a lot of ghost tours. No, it is a true story, but it's been exaggerated, and so a lot of the tales that I've heard, once I kind of went back in the research, I'm like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I remember being told. It's still pretty fucked up, and it's still pretty bad. So I don't want to discount that, but yeah, it's just some good old New Orleans history and some rich people being bored and crazy. Did you watch American Horror Story?
I did.
Season 3, I believe it is Coven.
Oh, okay.
Kathy Bates' character is Delphine LaLauries. It's Bates.
Oh,
Mhm.
Gotcha.
So for those of you who might have watched that, that's kind of that. They exaggerated her character within that, because it makes good TV, but it's kind of the high socialite of New Orleans that does really mean things to her slaves behind closed doors. And that's not nice.
Yeah.
Slavery is not nice alone. And then to do mean things to them on top of that. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about her. She was born Marie Delphine McCarty in 1787 in a Spanish Louisiana, New Orleans. So New Orleans is a really cool place because it was owned by so many different, the Spanish owned it, the French came in and owned it. And then you have the Caribbean influence coming in. You get a lot of that Creole, which Creole is a person of mixed European and Black descent, especially in the Caribbean. That kind of melting pot there. Their food is delicious, but it's a really cool city because you get all of these different influences. And even now today, you can see it in the architecture, you can see it again in the food, the music. It really is that melting pot, which is why I think it makes it such a special place. And a lot of history takes place there. So anyways, going back, it is Spanish Louisiana. Delphine's grandfather came to New Orleans from Ireland around 1730, and that was during the French colonial period. And Louisiana was originally claimed by France, and I didn't actually know this. It was named named La Louisiane, spelled a little different than now, and it was in honor of King Louis XIV. And I was like,
that makes sense.
yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, why didn't I? Anyways, so in 1791, there was a Haitian revolution. And so a lot of, Delphine was 4 years old at this time. A lot of slavery revolts were happening, and they were coming together and being like, fuck you, we don't want to be slaves. And so it kind of made a lot of slaveholders afraid of that resistance. Her uncle was murdered by slaves in 1771. Unfortunately, this kind of backlashes, and a lot of slaveholders become a lot more abusive and harsh because they're trying to keep that dominance in this revolt.
Yeah.
So that's quite sad. But Delphine gets married. She gets married not once, not twice, but 3 times, folks. And her first marriage is June 11th, 1800, to a man named Don Ramon de Lopez y Angulo. And she's 13 years old when she gets married.
Oh,
That's not legal. And well, then, but he was a high-ranking Spanish officer. They have a daughter. Okay, wait, listen to their daughter's name. Marie Borgia Delphine Lopez y Angulo de la Candelaria. That's her full name.
rolls off the tongue. I don't see what you're
I
trying
didn't
to
look
say.
at my paper at all. I memorized that. So she gets married at 13 to this high-ranking Spanish officer. They have a kid, and he dies. So she's a widow now. She marries again in June of 1808 to a man named Jean Blanc. He's a banker, a merchant lawyer, and a legislator. He buys a house on 409 Royal Street, and that
Good
is called
name.
the Villa Blanc. Yeah, Royal Street's a great. Oh, you've never been to New Orleans, have you?
I've never been to New Orleans.
I can tell. Oh, you gotta go. I literally have a PDF saved on my files that when my friends go, they're like, "Where do I go?" And I just send them this, like, first do this, then do that. Like,
I'm still trying to see all the states, and I haven't been to Louisiana ever. So that is pretty high on the. I'd say it's in the top 5 states I want to see next. So
yeah,
we'll get there.
it's good. I highly recommend it. And if anyone else is planning a trip to New Orleans, give me a shout out and I'll send you that list because I know where to go. So anyways, they have 4 kids together, and they really knew how to name their kids. Listen to these kids. These are their 4. Her second marriage is Marie Louise Pauline, Louise Marie Laure, Marie Louise Jeanine, and Jean Pierre Pauline Blanc. Not original. I'm like, you just flip-flopped. And then they had 4 more, George, Paul, John, and Ringo. Like, they all are just named the same thing. I was like, that's so cool.
So funny. I love that.
I know. I'm like, just everyone's like, you're all Marlon Jr. That's how I think of it. I don't go into much of these. She gets married, she has kids, they die. And so Jean Blanc dies in 1816. So she's a widow again. So that's 1816. She doesn't get married until 1825 again. So she takes a little lull. She's like, I'm going to put my Tinder account on pause for a minute.
Yeah,
and I'm
she
going to
took
do
like
me.
almost a 10-year break there, but that's all right.
Yeah, I'm going to focus on me and stop swiping, get to know myself again. She's going to do what I did, and date yourself. But she does have a 3rd marriage, June 25th, 1825, to Leonard Louis Nicolas LaLaurie. He was much younger than her, and she kind of in this marriage takes it different. Obviously, she was so young in her first marriage, and then these men kind of provided for her, but now she's got the money and she kind of takes charge of things. So in 1831, she buys a plot of land at 1140 Royal Street.
So still on Royal Street.
Still on Royal Street. It's in the French Quarter. And this is the place that is kind of the famous location. A year later in 1832, she builds a 2-story mansion with attached slave quarters there. Now, this whole time, she's maintained a central position in New Orleans society. So she was very high society, this, that. There was kind of a hush-hush, like, what's going on about that. But the marriage did kind of have problems. So it wasn't a great. Delphine actually petitioned in 1832 the first judicial district court for separation from bed and board of her husband. Delphine claimed that he had treated her in such a manner to render their living together unsupportable. And her son and 2 daughters also confirmed this. So they don't seem to separate permanently, but his presence, it still was kind of in that house until the day of the fire, which we'll talk about the fire. So now this is kind of where there's that mix of folklore meets reality and truth, but she had quite a few slaves, and in public, Delphine LaLaurie put on much of a show of being very polite to her slaves, other people's slaves, almost freakishly too much. And behind closed doors, she was actually abusing all of her work and crazy. This one girl, this is kind of where there's a mixed story. There was a 12-year-old child who was supposedly brushing her hair and snagged a knot, and it blew her into a fury rage. And she chased her, and the little girl got up on the roof to run away from being beaten, and she fell to her death. And people did witness this child falling, and they buried her there. The kind of hairbrushing story is one that's like, it's not written in stone, but I like it. I'm going to stick with it. But it kind of gets people talking and gets this like,
yeah, like how severe of a beating was this child experiencing where they would go to that length to get away from it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it says here she was 8 years old. Sorry.
That's even worse. I mean,
and
she's not sounding so great so far.
No,
you got to change your last name.
Not so great. I know. I better meet someone soon. We're going to kind of fast forward to what's going on in the house. But on April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out in the residence on Royal Street in the kitchen. When the police and fire marshal got there, they found the cook, who was a 70-year-old woman, chained to the stove by her ankle. The cook later said that it was a suicide attempt to get out of the beatings and everything. So she started the fire. She was chained up against the stove. So when they go in to try to evacuate the house, they ask the LaLauries if they can have the key to the slave quarters to make sure everyone's out, and they refused. So because they refused, the bystanders broke down the door to the quarters, and they found, in quotes, 7 slaves more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the next. So they found people just tied up with iron. I think there was 3 women in iron collars chained up to the walls. One woman had received, and I quote again, a very deep wound on her head, and she was too weak to be able to walk. So they are not in good conditions. So not only are they holding slaves, which at this time, unfortunately, it is legal, but severely mutilating and punishing. This is where the story kind of then gets more. There is ghost tours you can take now, and they will twist these stories to be like, oh, they had ears cut off and sewn onto other people. And, these are where I think those new age story versions are a little twisted. And I think the book that was written that first started that, the person that wrote that, like, owned a tour company. So they were trying to make their ghost stories sound a little more intriguing.
That goes a little too like Dr. Frankenstein-y, essentially. As cruel as she is, I don't think that she actually could do that type of surgery. Like that's not like when you can just throw together. You need someone else to be working
exactly.
with you. Yeah.
And I think I do believe in American Horror Story. They go far-fetched in that show anyways, but I think they did kind of like lean into that a little more. But they took those slaves and put them on display for in jail. It's kind of messed up, but the slaves were taken to a local jail for public viewing. And they say that up to 4,000 people had attended to view the slaves to convince themselves of their sufferings, to kind of see this, person in high society and what they've done. So everyone's pissed. No one likes the LaLauries anymore. So after that, 2 of the slaves in the mansion also were found dead. They started digging the body in the yard, and more bodies were found. A child was also found. They're not exactly sure who these people were. The child was identified, that was the girl that fell off the roof that was cited for doing that. And so they get ran out. This is kind of where it's crazy. It's not very well documented after the fire, which was 1834, kind of what happened. The mob violence after the fire was quite extreme, and the people went in and ransacked the house, and the house ended up burning down. But it is said that Delphine escaped to Paris and kind of lived out her days there. She'd always planned on going back to New Orleans, but never made it. And there's really not a lot of documentation kind of what happened to her, probably on purpose of her part, because a lot of people did not want her around. It does say, no, she was documented that she died 1849 at the age of 62. Is what the archives of Paris say. So not much is there, but the house didn't survive the original, but they rebuilt it 1838. So 4 years later, they rebuilt it, and that's the house that is standing today. And it has been everything from apartment buildings, high school, conservatory of music, refuge for young delinquents, a bar, a furniture store. And fun fact, in 2007, actor Nicolas Cage bought the house for $3.45 million. He owned that house, and he also owned another home in New Orleans that's supposed to be like the next. These are supposed to be the top 2 most haunted properties in New Orleans, and he bought both of them and then from what I've heard from stories, New Orleans kind of ran him out of the city, and they were like, we do not want you in this city, because no one really wants Nicolas Cage in their city. And
so here's a fun thing about Nick Cage while you bring that up, because you might find yourself wondering, why is Nick Cage in almost every straight-to-DVD movie that I see, but he's also in movies that are playing in movie theaters? Because usually it's just one or the other. It's because Nick Cage spends his money on properties very foolishly a lot.
Oh, is it like an actual thing he does?
It's if you look, he tends to buy random ass shit. Say like the mid to late 2010s. He was taking any movie role that was being offered to him because he had so many different like legal fees and property tax situations going on.
Last I heard, like 6 years ago, I was briefly seeing this guy in Vegas who lived at the Palms place, and supposedly he was like, Nicolas Cage lives here, and I was like, oh no shit, really? And he's like, yeah, he's always just like sitting outside, like on his car. I guess it was like a really expensive bougie car, just trying to be like, yeah, I'm Nick Cage, and he was like, yeah, no one here wants him. And I was like, man, if you're gonna get ran out of Vegas too, it's
he literally this year he announced that he had officially paid off all of his debts and would start to be more selective with his movie choices.
Oh my gosh.
So
like, who's your financial advisor? Like, who said that you have enough money? Like, National Treasure didn't do that good.
Yeah, you know, but yes, I think that is a very the fact that he bought that house is not surprising.
It's on brand for him.
Yes, very on brand for him.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good, creepy story. This is the other thing I love. Here at Before My Time, we kind of start getting into a little bit of the Halloween celebration the second week of September.
My apartment's already decorated. I've got skulls. The only thing I haven't done is I need to go buy my black candles and put my cobwebs out. But my black roses, all my skulls, everything is out. It is officially Halloween time.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
So, Gelsey, you bragged about this New Orleans list that you have. So,
yes.
Let's say I'm going to New Orleans and 3 spots that are must-see spots there. What are what are the 3 that you would recommend specifically to me?
Specifically to you?
Yeah, so I'm going on the trip.
Well, I know you don't drink, Matt, so that's this. My tradition, my family tradition is this bar that we go to, Lafitte's. It's the Pirate Bar, and it is the first bar in the U.S. And it's this old stone. The building itself is really cool, and that's where the Pirate Lafitte would go. And there's like no lighting in there. It's all stone, just candlelit. It's real. I mean, even if you're not gonna go, it's a really cool place to go in. I don't know that they do.
Oh. Well, then
I think it's just, I mean, you could go in and get a nice soda. It's really cool, but it's my family's tradition is that we always go there first and get a hurricane. It's really cool. There's a lot of history there. I mean, I would just be like, go straight to St. Louis Cathedral, which is right in the center of the quarter. And it's this iconic, beautiful white cathedral. There's a huge lawn in the front, and you are looking at the Mississippi. And it's just this, like, that's iconic New Orleans. Yeah. And so, yeah, I would start there, and then I would guide you down Bourbon Street, not to the crazy show your titties Bourbon Street, but very, very end. There's a jazz bar club called Fritzl's, and it's this tiny little jazz club. And when you go in, every band that plays there sounds like they're recording from the 1930s, and they shove you in really tight. Just sit there. I sit there for hours and listen to music.
All right, well, there we go. Now, if anyone else is planning a trip and they want to know how they can reach us for more touristy advice for New Orleans, where would you tell them to go?
Yeah, please find us on Instagram. You can DM us at BeforeMyTime_podcast, or on Facebook, just search Before My Time. We will pop up. Send us a message right on our wall. Let's show our knowledge and love of New Orleans to everybody. Or let us know where you like to go in New Orleans if you've been. And maybe I'll go there next time, because I'm due a trip.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.